Today I'm going to talk about something which probably isn't talked about a lot in CF. Usually CF is referred to as a respiratory lung condition and its main focus is that, but CF also affects the pancreas. So a lot of people with CF actually develop CF-related diabetes, which is slightly different to type 1 and type 2 diabetes. But I'm going to do a whole separate video on that, talk to someone who actually experiences it, because I actually don't. What I do experience is something called reactive hypoglycemia or postprandial hypos. It's a fancy word. I think that's how you say it. I don't actually know anyone who experiences it, so if you do, let me know, because I'm sure there are people out there. But with CF-related diabetes, your blood sugar goes too high and you need insulin to bring it back down. With reactive hypoglycemia, your blood sugars drop around 1 to 4 hours after you eat something. For me, it's usually around the 2-hour mark. And pretty much up until a couple of years ago, my reactive hypoglycemia was only activated in the mornings after I ate breakfast. Unfortunately, it has got worse since. That was fun, innit? If I ate something like crunchy nut cornflakes, Cheerios, Weetabix, then my blood sugars would guarantee drop around 2 hours after eating that. So I'd eat the breakfast, my blood sugars would go up, and then it would start to crash. And if I can eat something around about an hour afterwards, then I can stop that from going all the way down and it will sort of come back up again. But the problem was, I was never hungry an hour after breakfast. So for my breakfast now, I have to include something which has high fat in it. And I'll talk about this in just a second, but something like peanut butter on toast or avocado and eggs. I actually remember the first time I experienced a hypo. It was in A-level photography class when I was 17. Oh my god, 10 years ago. We're just gonna scoot past that. I just remember suddenly feeling quite like weak and lightheaded, and I started to like sweat a lot, and I became really hungry. And of course, I had no idea what was going on, but my body was right. I did need to eat something. If I hadn't have eaten anything, then it probably would have got quite serious quite quickly, because when your blood sugars go low, if it's not treated, you can eventually pass out, and in some serious cases, you can go into a coma or you can die. Full disclosure, this has never happened to me, obviously. So when I finally told the dietitian, she went and got the diabetes nurse, and she explained to me that what I was experiencing was reactive hypoglycemia. But she said there was a possibility that this could turn into CF-related diabetes in the future. So it's almost like a pre-diabetes. And I was like, oh cool, thanks guys, cool. I joke about it, but at the time I was actually really shocked and quite overwhelmed that I was sort of moving into the diabetes realm. And just like anything with CF, you learn to adapt. You learn new ways, you learn how to manage it. But unlike CF-related diabetes, there was no magic insulin which would help to bring those sugars up, or outsulin. You have to solely rely on high sugar, fast acting carbs to get your blood sugars back up. So jelly babies literally saved my life. Is it sustainable? No. Got my shirt in the wrong side out. Just pretend it's a trend, okay? So let me just explain what's happening in the body when your blood sugars go too low. Now, we all need food, right, to give us energy. That's pretty much GCSE biology. Smashed it. And one of those sources is carbohydrates. Now, when we eat something that has a lot of carbohydrates or sugars in, it actually gets absorbed so quickly by the small intestine into the bloodstream. And this causes your blood glucose levels to rise very rapidly. And this is normal for everyone. So let's just take it back a few steps. When carbohydrates are digested by the stomach, it actually gets broken down into a type of sugar called glucose. And this is then absorbed by the stomach and the small intestines into the bloodstream. And they do this sort of thing. They go, I'm going into the bloodstream. That's what I imagine they do. Now, there are some very clever cells in the pancreas called beta cells, and they are very sensitive to the amount of glucose in the bloodstream, which can then trigger a hormone called insulin. And what does insulin do? It brings down those blood sugars. These clever little cells actually check your blood glucose every few seconds to determine whether to release any insulin from the pancreas. How clever is that? After the glucose is absorbed into the bloodstream, the pancreas then releases insulin, which travels through the bloodstream along with the glucose right up to the cell doors. Now, the insulin has a magical little key to open the cell doors, which allows the glucose to rush into the cell and be converted into energy either immediately or stored for later use. So in short, insulin will stop your blood glucose level from going too high. It will bring it sort of back down to a normal range. At least this is what should happen. If I eat something rich in carbohydrates or sugar, then my blood glucose level is gonna rise very rapidly, but my pancreas is slow to release insulin at first. It's like, yeah, I'm just gonna take this chill, I'm just gonna relax, there's no rush really. And then by this point, my blood glucose level has started to decline, and then when my pancreas finally decides to wake up, it releases too much insulin too quickly, and it's just like, rock bottom! Now the physical symptoms of this, you can get lightheaded, weak, shaky, your vision can go a bit fuzzy, you start to sweat a lot, you get extreme hunger, you can get irritable, which makes sense, Kate. But most of all, you crave sweets, which is exactly what your body needs. So low blood sugar or hypo means that you're gonna need some high sugars to bring it back up again, right? This is where the magic of jelly babies comes in. And you can have anything, it can be full fat Coke or orange juice or any kind of sweets, but not chocolate. And although chocolate is high in sugar, it also contains fat, and your body takes longer to break down fat, therefore longer to be absorbed, and I will come back to that in just a minute. My go-to is jelly babies, and I usually have around 3 or 4, but the problem with that is you've got to wait for it to be absorbed, and in the meantime you're still getting the symptoms, you know, like it's not working, so you have more jelly babies, and then your blood sugar goes too high. Now the really important thing here is you can't just have a couple of jelly babies and then be on your merry way. No sir, no siree, no thank you. If you eat all of that sugar, then you're naturally gonna go high, and then what's gonna happen? You're gonna suddenly drop if you eat nothing else, and this is what's called a rebound hypo. It's not nice to have a hypo, let alone 2 hypos or 3 hypos in a day, because it makes you feel awful during it, but it also makes you feel terrible afterwards as well. Just like a what is how I would describe it. Very technical science terms there, Kate. So this is why it is so important to eat something after the jelly babies or sweets, and they recommend having slow acting carbs or complex carbs, which takes longer to absorb, therefore there's not this sudden increase in sugars. It's more of like a steady, slow increase over time, rather than a This is what happens when you have a hypo, but ideally you want to prevent the hypo from happening in the first place. And this is where it gets a little bit complicated, because not all carbs are bad, and it's not solely dependent on the amount of carbohydrates in food, it's more about the chemical structure. So there's something called the Glycemic Index, which I know sounds boring as heck, but the index separates food into low, medium and high GI, and it relates to how quickly the carbs are absorbed into the system. So a high GI means that it will be absorbed quickly, low GI absorbed slowly. So the GI system is based on one food at a time, but the problem with that is we don't just have one thing at a time. Like, we don't just have a slice of bread, we have something with the slice of bread. Or we don't just have Weetabix, we have milk on it, or baked beans if you want to go down that road. So going back to what I said about fat actually takes longer to be broken down in the body, and so does protein, because they are more complex molecules than carbs. And this is why it's so important to have protein and fat if you're having carbs in a reactive hypoglycemia setting. For example, if you're having a sandwich and you have white bread, which is high GI, and it is lethal to me, I cannot have white bread, but if you have white bread, that's a high GI. If you're having cheese with that, that's your fat. And then if you're having a bit of ham, then that's your protein, and then a little bit of salad, that's low GI, and that should theoretically be okay. And the other example that was given to me was if you have a jacket potato, that is a high GI, but if you have baked beans with that, that's a low GI, and then you grate some cheese on top, that's high in fat, and that should bring the overall GI of the meal down. So it's a combination of foods which can lower the GI. And I've actually heard that food that is cooked for longer or taken away from its natural form actually increases its GI, which is really interesting. So if you cook pasta until it's soggy, then that actually increases its GI, whereas if you cook it till it's al dente, then that shouldn't be too bad. So the longer you leave a banana to ripen, the higher its GI will be. So the more that that food is taken away from its sort of natural form, the more it's cooked, the more it's processed, more likely increase your blood sugars and have a higher GI. Please correct me if I'm wrong with this. I'm not a medical professional, nutritionist or dietitian, but it's really hard to sort of calculate the GI of foods because, like I say, it's not just down to the amount of carbs in it. It's a combination of things, and it's a combination of what you eat with it as well. So I find it quite difficult. Definitely more recently, my reactive hypos are getting worse because, like I say, it used to just be a morning thing, but now it's any time of day. The other day I had a hypo at 11:20, and then the next day I had a hypo at 2 a.m. and I'm just like, huh? In the UK, the normal blood sugar range is between 4 and 8. I know in America it's slightly different, they use different measurements. Anything below 4 is a hypo, anything above 8 is a hyper. High blood sugars. Hi! And the way that you measure this is by pricking your finger with a little finger pricker thing, and then you put that blob of blood that comes from your finger onto a piece of paper, and it magically checks your blood sugars. It's pretty clever, really. And I know a lot of people with CF-related diabetes have the Libra, which is like a little plastic device thing that goes on your arm, it sticks into your skin, and it reads your blood sugars consistently, and you just scan this Libra with an app on your phone and it automatically tells you your blood sugar. I haven't got that yet. I'm probably gonna head towards that way at some point. Of course, I know when I'm gonna go low, but sometimes you get the feeling and you check your sugars and it's like 5.5 and your body's like, psych! It's like, why you do this to me, huh? Why you do this to me? This actually happened the other day. I was getting the symptoms, I checked my blood sugar and it was 4.9, and I was like, I don't know which way this is going. So then I checked it 1 minute later, 4.5. Just like, it's going down downtown. Sometimes you're getting the symptoms before the results are actually showing. So from a mental health point of view, I've actually been getting quite overwhelmed recently with the reoccurrence of hypos and relearning all of this GI stuff. I don't know what I can eat anymore. I just want fruitcake. But I can't eat fruitcake. And then I just got really sad. Because of my cystic fibrosis, I have to have an annual review every single year, and in this annual review you have to fast from midnight the day before, and then when you get there they take bloods, and then you have to drink a glucose drink, straight glucose, on an empty stomach, and wait for 2 to 3 hours to predetermine whether I have diabetes or not, and whether my body can actually bring down that glucose by itself. And my pancreas is like, I got you, girl. Hold my beer. I've got you on this. I not only have to wait for 2 to 3 hours and still not eat anything, they have to then take more blood tests. After having the glucose drink and everything else, at this point, I'm getting pretty low. And I remember talking to like the social worker once, and I was just feeling really dizzy, like I think I'm gonna pass out. And then I remember someone rushing in with like a glass of orange juice after they had tested my blood sugars, and they were like, you need to drink this now. And I was like, oh, it's gone low, has it? Oh, what a surprise for someone who has reactive hypoglycemia. What a surprise when I keep on falling down the floor and now I'm crawling. It actually works for reactive hypoglycemia. It's just not nice when you go really low and you feel like you're gonna faint. 10 out of 10 would not recommend. On the whole, there's no definitive explanation of why this happens. Scientists still don't know why the pancreas releases too much insulin. So in short, if it wasn't for jelly babies, I would not be here right now. Which is a little bit dramatic, but it's true, it's true. So there we have it. Cystic fibrosis ain't just about the lungs. The pancreas has its moments too. And if you didn't know anything about reactive hypoglycemia, I hope you do now. I hope it's been helpful and insightful. And if you do have it, please let me know, because I would love to know someone else who has it. So if you've made it to the end, let's drop an emoji of a shoe. Any shoe will do. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next Wednesday. I cannot believe I've worn my t-shirt inside out this whole time. Oh no, I still got the tag on. Was I supposed to take this back?